This has been just such a moving service this morning. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Gorgeous. So my name is Meryl Fury. I am a registered nurse, and I have the pleasure of knowing Sister Harris Reese for quite a few years. We did great work together at Lake County Health Department, and that's how I am here with you today. She told me I have 40 minutes or so. The problem is I could talk about food for a long time, like days. So I'm gonna do really well. You know, Mary, you just kind of wave at me if I'm going too long. And I need you guys to like strap on your seatbelts because we're gonna roll. I originally had a PowerPoint created, but I forgot it. So we're gonna ask you to use your imaginations. My PowerPoints are really only pictures anyway, and it's more what I talk about. That's kind of the important part, I think. So I lead a nonprofit that's located address-wise here in Waukegan, but we do most of our work online. The nonprofit is called Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, and our big project is about child nutrition. So I am so happy to see these little ones here in the pews. Over time, over many, many, many generations, all the years that we've been here, we have done a disservice to ourselves in the way that we eat, and in particular in the way that we feed our children. And it causes us to grow and age aggressively and not healthfully. And we actually raise our children to develop illnesses, and that's what we're going to talk about. So my question is, how did we go from being such a strong race of people? And I'm thinking about the Africans who were brought here from Africa. They were rugged, hardy people, right? And so hardy that they were dragged from their homeland in brutal conditions. I want you to imagine all those pictures you've seen. And over generations and 160, 400, 600 years now, we've become the sickliest race in this country. We're more likely to die of aggressive diseases with or without treatment. It's appalling. How did we do that? How did we come from such hardy people to become the sickliest race in the country? I want you to know something, and I'm not bragging. I'm 62. I want you to just keep that in mind. I'm 62. I did not come from good stock. My mother had breast cancer on both sides. My father was alcoholic and depressed. We have sickle cell in our family. We have just all manner of illnesses, diabetes, high blood pressure, you know. But there's ways around that, and I refuse to follow that path, right? So when what was the song? My greatest desire? Oh, my greatest desire is to make a difference here today. Okay, so Seventh-day Adventists actually have an advantage in that your tradition talks about food and healthful eating, right? And there's more emphasis placed on diet, I think, in healthful diet, I'm gonna say, than in any other religion that I know of. So you have an advantage, and a lot of this stuff you already know. You've heard it. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know, except maybe a little bit of science I'll add in, and a little bit of maybe a couple anecdotes. But you really already know, maybe you just forgot, so we're going to like dust off the cobwebs and just remind you of stuff that you've already heard, okay? All right. So we're also going to do like what I call a little Roots tour. How many people here are old enough to remember Alex Haley's book, Roots? Okay, some of us are. Some of us are not. Okay, the quick version is that was a story about a slave that got taken from Africa and the generations of his family and what happened to him after that. Okay, that was the Reader's Digest version. It was a very powerful book and was turned into a movie. Seventh-day Adventists, like I said, have this amazing history that you can draw on, this tradition that you can draw on. There is what we call that, a set of places in the world where people live to be 100 years old, healthfully, actively engaged in their community. They live to be 100 more often than other places. Those are 5 places in the world. So it's Greece, Costa Rica, Japan, can I remember the other one? And Loma Linda. There's another one I can't remember, Loma Linda, California. Now, the interesting thing is that whereas all those other places, oh, it's Japan, Italy, Costa Rica, Greece, and Loma Linda, there it is. Of all the places, the one where people don't live more to be 100 years old is Loma Linda. The rest of those places, the people live to be 100 years old and better, and they're engaged in their community, they're active, they're lucid, they're doing what they do. Loma Linda's in the United States. And the United States has its particular way with people regardless of your color or where you come from, right? Okay, so let's go back about 500 years to what the African diet looked like before the slave traders came, right? First slave traders were actually Portuguese in West Africa. And the African diet at that time was really mostly fruits and vegetables. There was very little meat. You got to remember, there was no refrigerators. There was no blocks of ice to keep the meat safe from rotting. So really, their diet was mostly fruits and vegetables. So if you saw it, it would look like yams and taro root and black-eyed peas and greens like kales and things like that. There was a little bit of fish because most of those people were on the west coast of Africa, so they did some fishing. But again, not a lot. And the meat was used, the animal products were used to flavor the food. No one got big slabs of meat as a meal like we get now. A quarter pounder didn't exist, right? So they ate mostly fruits and vegetables. There was also grains. Our ancestors were rice farmers, so they grew rice. There were great seasonings, right? Peppers and ginger and all these lovely, what we now know are anti-inflammatory foods. So they ate those. And then came the slave event, right? Which was pivotal. And we actually, you know, we have to sometimes remember that Africans predated slavery, right? We kind of forget. Sometimes we think our history started with slavery, or we only go that far back. But really, there's so much history prior to that. But slavery was pivotal, right? So we moved into slavery, and in slavery, of course, everything changed, everything. The slave holders made sure to control as much of the enslaved people's life as they could, and that included the food. The food was critical. So one thing, hold on, I'm gonna get some water. Mary, can I have that? So one thing I want you to remember is that when one group wants to control another group, they control the food first. And that is all the time. I think that was probably created by the English. They're very aggressive about moving around the world and controlling other cultures and taking advantage of the riches found in other lands. And the way that they created an amazing system for doing that. It includes controlling the food. So for the enslaved people, food went from being this very rich, plant-based, ripened in the sun, mangoes and plantain and bananas and coconut and citrus and beans and rice and things like that, very healthful, to being basically slop. Slop. It is also called juba. Juba, or slop, was something that was kept in a bucket. I want you to imagine this. So here you have a bucket or a big pot, and it's filled with what other people won't eat. It's filled with what you would not give your dog. And it is crusts of bread, it's fish bones, it's apple cores, and just horrible, horrible stuff you wouldn't eat. You would leave that for the vultures or something like that. And that's what the enslaved people were given to eat, right? That was mostly what was given to the field workers, and actually that slop was the leftovers from the house slaves. So the house slaves ate whatever they ate, they threw it in a bucket, and that was given to the field slaves. You can only imagine what that must have done to the minds of these people, to think that they were living in brutal conditions with people that would rather beat them than say hello, and they were being fed this slop. I mean, that had to be something. So the slaves actually started singing a song. You know, they made a rhythm out of it to sort of manage the cognitive dissonance that goes along with having to eat something that you don't really think you should eat. And the song was called Juba. It is really where our troubles begin. So the song I'm just going to do, I do not sing well, okay, you guys? But I'm going to tell you this song just because it's interesting as a historical piece. The song is, Juba dis and Juba dat, and Juba killed a yellow cat. You sift the meal, you give me the husk. You bake the bread, you give me the crust. You eat the meat, you give me the skin, and that's the way my mama's troubles begin. Truly. Yeah. Okay, so that's what most of the field slaves got. On some plantations, and plantation is a nice way to put it, it's really a slave labor camp. I don't mean to minimize what that was. In some of those locations, the slaveholder actually also gave salt, rice, lard, salt pork, salt fish, molasses, unsifted cornmeal, which is where we get that gritty texture for our cornbread. If they were lucky, they also got to hunt for small game, but you got to remember they weren't allowed any weapons. So I don't know how they did that, trapping and, you know, things like that. And they were able to catch fish, raccoon, turtle, possum, squirrel. Those are the other 4 food groups, right? Sometimes they were allowed a small garden plot, but it wasn't good. It really was not good. Very hard conditions for people to try and maintain themselves. And now we know that this kind of diet is what promotes and causes heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, colon cancer, and all kinds of other things, right? On George Washington's plantation, they allowed them 20 herrings a month. That's not even one small fish a day, right? Okay, so that's what slaves got used to eating. Our forefathers and foremothers got used to eating that, and that became a Southern style, right? That became the beginnings of Southern food. Then slavery ended, which was really, you know, it ended and it didn't end, right? Because, okay, you got kicked off the land, but now you had to pay rent to live in the same conditions, and you owed a certain amount back to the guy whose land it was, and there was Jim Crow, and there was the black codes, and there was all that stuff. So it wasn't really an ending of slavery, it was just a change. All right, but our eating patterns didn't change. Even with the ending of slavery, the patterns did not change. We didn't have any more money. We actually owed money then. And we weren't used to eating healthy food. I actually saw a description of a plantation that said there were moats around the fruit trees so that the enslaved people couldn't get to fresh apples. They couldn't get to the pears or the peaches or the cherries. They couldn't get to them. And the way that the human mind works, you know, okay, if I can't get to it, it's none of my people that look like me get that, then I guess it's not for me. So when slavery ended, a lot of people did not make that leap. right? They didn't think should start eating fruits and vegetables. They just continued to eat the juba, the slop, right? So I'm going to remind you again that if you want to control people, you control their food, and that's still how it is today. It still is. I want you to think about that stretch in North Chicago where there's only fast food restaurants right there. I want you to just keep that in mind a second. I also want you to know that eating that Southern diet, and let me tell you, wait a minute, because my mother would be here stewing if she heard me. I grew up eating pig feet, chitlins, hog maws, greens, fatback, cracklins. I ate all of that. I did. And I loved it. She was a great cook, my mom, you know, really good. I ate that. I don't do it anymore. But that diet is associated with a 56% higher risk for heart disease and a 46% higher risk of sudden cardiac death. 50% increase in risk of death in people with kidney disease and a 30% higher risk of stroke. In other words, those foods and that pattern, that way of eating and that thought that we have that this is comfort food, this is what my family always ate, this is important to me, I gotta have this, that's a deadly way to think. It's a deadly pattern. So knowing that that's our history, I still haven't had any water, hold on. So knowing that that's our history, and knowing that that's where we come from, I want you to think about, just a little bit, think about what food is available in your own neighborhoods. What's out there? Are there any grocery stores that actually carry fresh fruits and vegetables? Are there any whole grains like brown rice or barley or quinoa or any of that, right? Are there beans? Right? Is it all processed? Is it all in a bag or a can? What do we have, right? And thinking about that, just imagine there is, well, I'll allow you to draw the correlation yourself. Is there a correlation between the way we as African Americans, and I'm going to say it's anybody in this country, really, everybody's subject to the same stuff, right? But is there a correlation between the way we eat and the way we wind up health-wise? There really is. There super duper is, right? Even coming from really, really strong, tough people, after a few hundred years of eating juba slop, it's gonna have a toll, right? There's even a correlation between, like, okay, eating that way and the stressors and the lack of sleep that happened with still happens now, but certainly with the enslaved people, all of that pressure and stress will actually change your genetic makeup. That's a whole body of knowledge that is just being really investigated now. It's called epigenetics, right? And that's a subject for a different talk, but what we do to our bodies will actually turn our genes on and off. So there was a study done by a friend of mine, actually, wonderful guy named T. Colin Campbell, and he studied the ability to turn cancer tumors on and off and was able to do it consistently. You'll never guess how. By either increasing animal protein, animal meat, in the diet, that would turn tumors on. Decreasing animal protein in the diet would turn tumors off. If you eat plant protein, rice, beans, tofu, tempeh, and actually almost all vegetables have some kind of protein in them, tumors don't grow under those conditions. So when we think about what it is that's important to us food-wise and where we've been and what means comfort and what means my mother loved me and this is my culture and this is my heritage, seriously, think about slavery and the Southern diet is not actually our original heritage. Our original heritage was on the west coast of Africa for most of us, and that's where it was mangoes and bananas and kale and rice and beans and all those things. Those rainbow of foods. Okay, so slavery ended. Let me go back. Then we moved north, right? A lot of us, everybody here moved north, right? A lot of us stayed in the South. And the foods that were marketed to us here in the north were the same foods that we ate in the South, which makes sense because that's what we were eating. One of the things that were marketed, and still are processed meats, right? Processed meats last a long time, so that's bacon, hot dogs, jerky, deli meat, all that stuff. Have you guys heard that that was declared carcinogenic in 2015? You heard it, right? So many people haven't heard it. It's a well-kept secret. Okay, so from me to you, right now, my desire is, if you know anybody that's eating that stuff, drop them a line. Tell them, let them know. I don't know anybody who wants cancer, but eating bacon, cracklins, turkey sandwiches, hot dogs, brats is a sure path. It's a sure path. Okay. All right, so here we are now in 2023, and it is my belief that we are still enslaved. We are enslaved by what we eat, and I'm going to say this as a nurse. The medical system makes money off of our bodies. I don't pull punches, okay? It makes money off of keeping us sick. So that every time we have to go to the clinic or the doctor, okay, there's a fee for that, and they will bill your insurance, or you pay up front, right? You pay cash. And then you get a diagnosis. I hope you never have the diagnosis of diabetes or any of those other illnesses, but so many of us do. And then you will have that for the rest of your life, right? And you're given some medications, and you will take those for the rest of your life. And you'll come back every 3 months. And that's how the system runs. I managed a clinic not too awful far from here, and I had to make sure those schedules were full. There is no room for empty space in a clinic schedule. That means we're not making money, okay? So we have to keep people coming in. Can't have them get well too fast. In fact, don't get them well at all. Just keep them coming in, because, right? Okay, I'm going to tell you a story. All right, so I have this nonprofit that I have the pleasure of leading. Mary, how am I doing on my time? Am I okay? All right, thank you. So I have this nonprofit, which I love. Wakes me up in the morning and puts me to bed at night. And it was founded by a cardiologist in like the Aurora area, right down that way. Cardiologist, he was born into a family and actually was a person himself, a very large person, right? Very heavy. His parents were 300 pounds and more, and he went into cardiology to try to make a difference for these people, for his family and for the people he loved, right? And no matter what anybody thinks, we go into medicine because we want to help people. That's what we do, right? So he goes into medicine and he gets double board certified in cardiology, and he learns everything he can, and he follows the guidelines for the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, the American Board of Cardiology, and all kinds of stuff. And everything that he did, he applied to his patients and to his family, and he found he could not make not one difference for those people. doing what he had learned in school for his several $1,000,000 in tuition. So he went looking further, and he started trying to figure it out. Because like I said, he was a big guy himself, so he started running marathons, thinking maybe it's the exercise I'm not doing, right? So he starts running marathons, still made no difference. In none of his numbers, not his blood pressure, not his cholesterol numbers, nothing changed. He kept looking, and he landed on whole food, plant-based diet, right? Did a lot of looking at that. Looked like the way to go. So he's changed his diet to eating all whole fruits and vegetables, right? Whole grains, nuts, seeds, mushrooms, legumes. And in short order, he dropped the weight and his numbers improved. He went back to his cardiology colleagues and he said, this is it. I found the answer. We can do this. We can make a difference for our people, our community. We can make a difference. So his whole little office of cardiologists started doing the same thing, and they started teaching about how to eat, right? Plant-based eating. Eliminate the meat, eliminate the dairy products, the eggs, the fish, the chicken, all of the animal products, and go with mostly unprocessed vegetables and fruits. Taught that to their patients and made a huge difference, knocking it out of the park. Decrease in blood pressure, decrease in medications, decrease in heart attacks, decrease in strokes, decrease in diabetes, all of that stuff falling away, right? They're thinking, yes, we found it, hey, right? They get a call from the head of their cardiology department. And the chief medical officer says, hey, fellas, I want to see you in my office. They're like, yeah, we're about to get our props. We're going to get it, right? Here we go. They go to they call it the CMO, chief medical officer, right? They go to the CMO's office, and they sit down, and they're like ready to hear it, ready to get their kudos. And the chief medical officer says, so it looks like something's changing in your practice. What's going on? And they say, yeah, we're knocking it out of the park. We're decreasing all of these markers. People are feeling better. They're losing weight. Their diabetes is under control. All this is going on. We're doing really great. We love it. And the CMO said, you got a problem. And they're like, what do you mean we have a problem? Well, CMO says, we hired you to make a certain amount of money, and you're not making what you need to earn your keep. So you either get your numbers up, you either do something to make more money, or you'll be doing something to find another job. It didn't matter to this health system that people were getting better because it was negatively affecting their bottom line. So this cardiologist was like staggering as he left the office, right? And he went back and decided to start the nonprofit that I have the honor of leading now. After he was in it for a year, he realized that it was like way too big of a job for him and his 6 kids and his wife and all the things that he had to manage. So he stepped away, and I was elected to be president and CEO. In that time, thank you, in that time, it's totally my honor. Thank you. In that time, COVID hit, and I realized that there's plenty of people who need this message, right? They need to know. And in particular, and I could get tearful if I think about it too long, it's our babies. It's our babies. Because we're raising them to be sick. We're raising them to have diabetes and high blood pressure and cancers, and I'll start crying if I think about it too hard. But I can't live with that. We can't do that. It is against God. It's against nature to feed your children poison. That is not what we're here for. Okay, let me settle down. So, my big desire, and nothing makes me happier than to give a child broccoli. Oh my God. We have the pleasure of working in schools. Actually, we were just in Cook Magnet School back a couple months ago, and we were just working at the Boys and Girls Club beginning of this month. And we just feed them black beans and rice, or red bell peppers, or tomatoes, and we teach them to cook, and we teach them about growing food, also gardening a little bit. And it is a beautiful thing to watch little children light up over a yellow bell pepper. That's something, right? So another thing I want to let you know, there was recently a study done by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Let me make sure I'm hitting the high points here anyway. That said that the average child in the United States doesn't get any vegetables within a week. And they may not get any fruit either. Yeah, we got to do better than that. Because it is literally these fruits and vegetables that will prevent, stop, and reverse disease, and that is proven in science. It is the only thing that will reverse, stop, and prevent those illnesses like diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, cancers. It's not 100%, but it'll stack the deck in your favor for sure, right? And there are many, I can't tell you how many cases of people who have reversed illnesses. So, for children, important that we feed them. Start them young, get them to understand chicken nuggets are not food. Hot dogs are not food. Honey bunches of marshmallows, that's not food. I'll tell you, I have a special word of condemnation for dairy products. Milk is not food unless you're a baby cow. There are no baby cows walking on two legs. And on top of that, something like 75 to 80%, depending upon what section of the population you're looking at, 75 or 80% of black and brown skinned people do not digest milk. And it's not just lactose. So drinking Lactaid does not help. Cow's milk and cheese are the highest sources of saturated fat that we have. And then we wonder why 655,000 people die every year of heart attack. It's because we feed them heart attack producing foods. And in schools, excuse me, children are fed this every day. It is put on their tray, boom, and they're expected to drink it. Now, good news. This coming school year, Illinois passed a law where children can get a plant-based meal. It has to be with request of the parent, or if the child's old enough, like these beauties right here, you could ask yourself for a plant-based meal. But if you're not old enough, you know, and your parents know better, the parents can ask. And it is supposed to be supplied by law. Now, one thing that our nonprofit is doing is actually promoting that. We are creating a campaign to bring awareness to that and uptake so that more parents and young people know they have that choice. And they don't have to eat food like hot dogs or corn dogs or pepperoni or anything that would promote cancer in their bodies. Okay, so I have a request. Excuse me. Would you please do me a favor? Would you please turn to the person next to you, and if there's not somebody next to you, kind of scooch in with somebody who is, just temporarily, and say one thing maybe that you hadn't heard of before this talk, and one thing that you might do differently when you leave here. I'll give you like 1 minute each. Okay, Sister Harris is giving me the sign. I'm going to have to ask you to stop. Sister Harris is making eyes at me. Okay. All right. I'm going to ask, just because this fills up my day, this is how I fill my cup, right? I just love hearing this. So if I say 3 people on this side and maybe 3 people on this side, tell me what you will do differently to make changes in your life. Yes, you already put your hand up. I saw you. Or just even one.
Oh, well, I think that I would emphasize the fact to children, since I'm in that field, how important it is for them to eat more vegetables and fruits.
Thank you. 2 more over here. Yes.
This is going to sound a little strange, but I will listen to my friend pounds this daily. Literally pounds this daily. And I kind of half, 3/4 listen. If anyone, most of you know, I probably lost about 45 pounds in the last 7 or 8 months. I really anything different except eating less junk, and eating more. You know, instead of going for cake, I have fruit in my refrigerator. I have not been doing a little better, maybe I should do a lot better.
Beautiful. Thank you. One more. Yes.
I will try to eat more organic
Okay.
and non-GMO food.
Beautiful. Wonderful.
Meat that is growing a lot.
Right. Woo. Yes. Yes. Okay. Hold on. I got to come back to that one. Okay. Give me 3 people on this side. Yes. Yes. In the pink.
Thank you so much for all your wonderful information. But one thing, I'm blessed and privileged to run a daycare center. So I have several children, and I want to implement a more healthy menu. So we do lots of healthy things. I don't want to say that I don't, but there are some things probably that I could change. So I'm really looking forward to implementing that and offering that to the children so they can be more healthy. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Stripes.
Just telling my daughter, I believe in the health message over 7 years, and I've been a vegetarian for 12 years. For some reason, I gradually stopped putting meat back into my diet. So what I was telling her, I want to reverse it back to where I was a vegetarian and very healthy.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I guess for me, since I had the biggest sweet tooth in the world, I need to cut out the sugars because I could do so well for a week, but I could walk into Walgreens, there's that Hershey's bar, there's that box of Mike and Ike, and I would eat it before I get home.
Right.
I'm mad at myself for
Right.
a week, but then the next week I'm doing it again. So for me, it's the sugars and the cheese.
Beautiful. Love that. Yes.
My wife is the one I really I
Yeah. So what are you going to do differently then? Beautiful. All right, one more, yes. And talk up a little bit. It's a little hard for me to hear.
How do you feel about a person that would only have a steak like maybe twice a week or something like that, and they would eat the rest of it maybe plant-based? And so, like you just said, don't eat it at all.
Well,
Like don't eat any meat at all, or just still eat it in moderation.
so, you know, that's sort of,
We have to put squash on the grill, and we have to put all vegetables on the barbecue.
okay, so, you know, that would fall in the question and answer section, which is good. It's good. Okay, knowing what I know about human health, which is a lifetime of study. I started eating plant-based when I was 15, okay? I think, I mean, I'm gonna, what we call this is waffling I'm doing. I personally don't want to put animal products in my body because I know there are lots of other things that are built into animal products. So for example, high hormone use and high antibiotic use, which causes problems for the human body for digestion. It also provokes early menstruation in children, in girls, and early puberty, breast development, right? And that happens in boys and girls. I don't see any value in eating animal products myself. There is no nutritional component that you get from meat that you can't get elsewhere. The only vitamin supplement that they're really careful about recommending for people who do not eat animal products at all is vitamin B12. And that's really because it's supposed to come from a bacteria in the dirt, and we've pretty much eliminated most of the bacteria from the dirt due to our farming practices. If it is a thing where you just feel like you have to have meat, or it's a nostalgic thing, or it reminds you of happy times, that's up to you. If you are going to eat it, I would not eat more than something about that big, and I would not do that more than once a week. That's my answer for that one. Somebody mentioned something about meat grown in a lab. I just heard that the meat that they're growing now in labs is called no-kill meat, right? It's supposed to be better for the people who are animal compassionate among us. But I got to tell you that that meat is created from cells that they harvest from animals. The cells are cancer cells. They are looking for cells that grow rapidly so they can produce meat quickly for sale. So they're using cancer cells for that. Nowhere else in the meat production industry, I don't think anywhere else would they intentionally leave cancer cells on a steak or on a ham or on a chicken leg. But this one, that's what they're doing. That's what that is. Chemicals. Somebody said something, it was sweets, and somebody said something about sweets, right? So one of the, oh, you were saying that you lost a bunch of weight. That's what it was. That's why I was thinking of you. Probably one of the least talked about but most toxic aspects of the standard American diet is the chemicals in the food. There are 10,000 chemicals that the FDA has allowed into our food system. And I'll tell you, none of those have been really thoroughly tested over generations to know what the impact is. So if you have little ones, and let's say they're dealing with ADD or autism or something like that, please remove the chemicals from their diet. The human body does not process or understand chemicals, you know? So the additives, the preservatives, the colors, all of that stuff we don't even know what it is, flavor enhancers, salt, different kinds, all that is not good for the human body. And actually, how's my time, Mary? I need to be done. Oops, see, I told you I could talk about this a long time. I'm not done. Okay, I'll just say this one thing. When you look at neurodevelopment, brain development, and you look at the number of or the type of chemicals the brain requires to function, just to process what goes on inside the body and the stimulation that's coming from outside the body, how you handle math and science and English and speaking, and behaving yourself in church, how do you do all that? There's neurotransmitters that you need, and they come from your food, and they only come from fruits and vegetables. They do not come from beef or pork or fish or chicken or eggs or milk or any of that. And they certainly don't come from Twizzlers or Twinkies or Mike and Ike's, right? Okay, those things are not food. Remember, those are not food. Okay, so let me hurry up because Mary's looking at me. Okay. When you think of being in health and prospering, I fully believe we have to take responsibility for ourselves right now, here today. That's the thing, right? We just got to take care of it right now because we don't know what tomorrow holds, and there's no promise of anything. There's only what we have right now, here today. So please, please, please eat Brussels sprouts, broccoli, avocados, apples, bananas, mangoes. Have greens, and they don't need to have fat back in them. They don't need to have pork in them. Eat curries and ginger and turmeric, and eat peppermint. Eat all those herbs, the basils and the cayenne pepper. Eat things that are there to preserve your body and to improve your metabolism. Eat a wide variety. We say eat the rainbow, eat the rainbow. Purple, okay. Kids, what are the colors of the rainbow? Slam dunk. So, red vegetables, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, violet, all those colors are important. This is how you break free. This is how you live in health and prosper. This is how you drop the shackles of slavery, because the last of it is sitting on your plate. Get rid of it. Let it go. You don't need it anymore. And on that happy note, that's really all I got for you. Thank you so much. If you're going to go for a plant-based milk, I tend to use oat milk myself. Go for one that's as organic and as clean as you can, because a lot of those have extra stuff added to, stabilizers and oils and guar gum and carrageenan and all kinds of fun stuff. I don't even know what that is. So go for as clean a one as you can with, minimal ingredients, 2 or 3 ingredients. It's not the same. So a plant-based meat is something like Impossible Burger or a Beyond Burger or stuff. Those are better in that you're not killing animals to get it, but they're also high in fat, high in salt, and highly processed foods. So we would recommend you only use those sparingly and as you transition to a fully whole food plant-based diet. Okay?